Welcome back, everybody, to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you to navigate these hypersexualized times. Now, everybody, listen up. If you're not feeling super optimistic about the world, if you think that worrying about the future, about AI or politics or global geopolitics, if worry and concern is driving you, you got to chill. And I don't mean to say that problems aren't real. What I'm saying is, how are we going to create Chanoguk, this thing that resembles God? Well, it's going to come from people who are living in the light, who are realistic and putting in the work, but also optimistic, filled with gratitude. And that's what today is about, being pure, right? And this is like a loaded term that has so much negativity associated to it because of a misunderstanding. We've talked about purity in the past, but today Benjy and I unpack it in a way that's very practical and very important if you want to be somebody who has sexual integrity, who maintains sexual integrity, and who has a really radiant, blessed life. This is mandatory because you cannot be blessed to somebody, you can't be married and having kids and being resentful and expect that you're going to enjoy anything, right? You'll be steeped in negativity or fear or anger or self-hatred or any of these things. So in order to clean this up, we need to focus on something. What is that something? Purity. But what is purity? Great question. Let's get into it in this episode. Hey, Benjy.
Oh, hey, Andrew, what are you doing here?
Nice to see your face.
What you doing?
How's your face these days?
Face is nice and hydrated. Thanks for asking.
We today, everybody, we're gonna be talking about fashion tips and makeup tips. Just another day here. High Noon. Do you take care of yourself? High Noon, we're known for like internal hygiene. We are very hygienic, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. I don't know about physically though. How are we doing in that department? I don't brush my hair, clearly.
Are you talking about taking care of yourself or being hygienic? Those are different things.
Very good point. Just general maintenance externally means, washing, but also like vanity. Do you moisturize your face? Here's a question.
After I turned 30, yeah, I started doing it, actually. Never my whole life washed my face with soap. It's just water, just plain old water, and never had any issues. And then, I don't know, I just started washing my face with soap, if that's considered hygienic.
Yeah, that's like top echelon, fancy.
People have different standards for hygiene, Some people, yeah.
Yeah, I think, men are your age and my age. I don't want to clump you together with me. Don't want to bring you down, buddy. But you used to wear suits every day. I mean, everybody. Like 100 years ago, everybody wore suits all day, every day. You had one or two suits, just wear it every day. But even like my dad's generation, I remember his closet very well. He had 20 suits, something like that. They were all the same. They're like gray or black, not black, maybe brown. Some left over from the 70s that were just really ugly looking. But he went into the office. Check this out. Briefcases. Those things were so stupid. So easy to rip it out of somebody's hands. But like, it's just so inconvenient to carry your stuff. But that was before. I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. Now everybody just they wear backpacks. Like adult men wear backpacks. There's no like distinction between going to your first day of kindergarten and going to the office as an executive. Everybody's wearing backpacks. Maybe less Paw Patrol imagery on the backpacks the older you get, but backpacks nonetheless.
I used to have a briefcase, just for the record.
Get out of here.
I did. It was more when I was a child, and I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Probably my dad's. I remember it. I haven't thought about it until you brought it up this moment, but I used to have a briefcase.
There you go.
I didn't dare go to school with it, but I carried it around with me, and I put toys in it and probably money and such.
Your lunch money. Yeah. Well, I mean, stuff like that. I bring that up because now I don't like when you go into the office back in the day and everybody seemed to have an office job, or you're either a laborer or an office worker. Now everybody just works in a coffee shop, right? But you don't know what people are doing. They could be just, watching YouTube videos, or they could be running a multinational organization. Everybody's at the same coffee shop. But back in the day, you go to the office and you're not having hair like this. Like, look at this. You know, you're not wearing this. So it's a different era for sure. And so I think when a high noon goes anywhere, people sometimes are shocked by, in the beginning, they're like, you know, don't you guys have a uniform? And that's what brought in the existential crisis, where high noon, I think, little known fact, high noon at that time was Benjy, Sammy, myself, and Mitsue and Uncle Dave in a Korean shopping mall, spending a good 3 to 4 hours looking for what we could all agree on is fashionable and like a uniform. Benjy found a blazer. Benjy wouldn't take off the blazer. It was like a maroon blazer. And he's like, this is it. I got it, guys. And we're like, that's not it for us. He's like, no, this is it. I got it. And he just wouldn't take it off. But we could not agree on what a uniform would look like. So we just abandoned the entire idea. Because I thought it would be kind of cool to like show up and have like high noons looking slick. We're looking fresh. But I think that's maybe just not who we are. Who knows? I don't know. We tried. We sincerely tried. You know, there's people who go to jobs and work hard. There's people who do mining. And this is like labor that takes your health away from you because it's really hard work, very intense. Not putting this on the same level, but after 3 to 4 hours of shopping together with the high noon staff, we all were exhausted and needed a nap.
Yeah.
That was mentally just war.
I had a good time. I my blazer. Just for
Not see what I'm saying. So yeah. Anyway, you know, I recorded a podcast maybe 2 months ago, Benjy. And then after I posted it or I looked at the video, I was like, oh my God, I totally meant to wash my hair or like comb it.
The Super Saiyan hair episode you're talking about?
It was, I don't know, I was in Mongolia. All I remember is I meant to put on a hat actually because my hair was out of control and I forgot. And that was kind of like I got to get my life together kind of moment because I'm representing an organization and I look like I just escaped from an insane asylum.
You had at least 3 comments on that video that I recall about your hair.
See, maybe it's better. It's like, how do you get attention online these days? You know, look at us. We just have
because you went the whole episode without mentioning it, and at the very end, you're like, "Oh, look at my hair," you know. And so someone was like, I thought you were doing a new style until you mentioned it at the very, very end of the episode.
Well, that's the thing. When you're this cool, as you know, I find myself, I do things accidentally that people pay thousands of dollars for. Thousands of dollars to have a staff to manicure their hair in such a way that they could get such a result. Me, I just have a shower before bed and then wake up and do a podcast. How about that? How about that? Custom. Yeah. All right. Anyway, this is all aside from the main point here. We wanted to talk about purity. We wanted to talk about this idea of, so we've gone through episodes about purity. We had like a deep dive. If you want to harken back, you just put in a website, purity, you find a few episodes about it. We actually had like I don't think it was a debate because we all kind of agreed, but we had a discussion about purity. But it's such an important point, and it's so heavily contested and misunderstood, the idea of what is purity. And even to the point where there's an entire wing of trauma. I was showing you some links, I think, of these organizations that help people process the trauma from the purity culture, from religious purity culture is how they put it. But it's true, like back in the day, some of the methods were very sketchy. It was like, if you become sexually impure, basically you're dead. You're dead to me. You're dead to the world. You're not religious anymore. God doesn't love you. Like this kind of, you know, propaganda, which is not the essence of any faith, you know, but it's like an interpretation because parents don't want their kids to suffer, right? And so some parents operate out of love and other parents operate out of fear tactics,
right.
You know, based on their own insecurities. And so purity has, for some reason, even though it's the most beautiful thing ever, has a lot of baggage associated with it because people misunderstand it and misrepresented it. And so we want to unpack a little bit about how it's not a destination. It's not a thing that you have. It's not a status that you put on your social media profile. Andrew Love, pure. And also the weird part is purity is often associated with ethnic cleansing, which is scary, right? But like that's what the Nazis did. They wanted to have a pure race, which was for them Aryan. I also researched that last time I was in Germany when I was in line for immigration. I was like, wait, why was Hitler all for blonde haired, blue eyed people when he didn't have that? And it's worth investigating. Not the point of this, but.
Well, it is clear that we've responded historically, traditionally, religiously to sex in a very reactive way, in a very fear-inducing way, and the reason is understandable. I think it's like we didn't ever have a clear purpose for the sexual organ. We didn't never had pure purpose for what sex is, the purpose of sex, and so without a clear understanding of why, of the fall of Adam and Eve, the misuse and dysfunction of sexuality throughout history, what is God's design for sexuality? Without any of that, I get it. Like, people are afraid. Parents are afraid. They don't know how to do it because most people have had a dysfunctional relationship with sexuality. And so the natural response is like, I don't know how to deal with this, so let's just call it bad and ban it from our faith, from our religion, from our home.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because, like, it's really easy, like you've noted, for people to say like, oh, it's religious shaming. How many times I've seen or heard that term? It's like, oh, it's shame for my sexuality. Partly I get it, and it's true, but partly I think it's just honestly personal justification to live people's lies, right? I mean, it's like people are become very incentivized to chastise or ridicule their parents or their faith or their upbringing in order to justify a certain lifestyle and behavior.
Which incidentally has no vision and is just a reaction, right?
Yeah, no vision. There's no understanding of the purpose of sexuality, any of that stuff. And so it's like I'm raising these kids now, right?
Your kids, are they yours?
All the kids in the world.
Just
all
these kids.
All my foster children in the world. So 10, 8, and 3 years old. So especially the 10 and 8-year-old, the thing I emphasize regarding sexuality, because, I've thought a lot about this, right, in our line of work, like how do we teach them about sexuality in a healthy, meaningful, not shame-inducing way? And my honest response, because this is what I've learned in High Noon, honestly, is always going back, what's the purpose of your sexual organ? And so I ask that pretty frequently, like, what's the purpose of your sexual organ? Anytime there's, sexuality being discussed in our home, or there's, stuff that we're watching that's, and we're not watching anything sexual in nature, but, like,
well,
it's in
you
the
might.
air.
I've been watching a lot of stuff about like the minions and like, there's a lot of innuendos and stuff.
I was finding a song on Spotify, and you know how Google sometimes is really dumb about finding songs, and it plays a random song. I did that on Spotify on my phone. I was like, play this song from this movie, and it played some really borderline pornographic, like, woman. I don't know what it was. I was like, what the hell is this? And then, and so like things like that come up. Even like Disney movies, they're not sexual. But there's like innuendos, and there's like
so much
the sexual tension. You can feel it, especially between guys and gals. And so I just kind of go back to that question, like, what's the purpose of our sexual organ? I have to remind myself, honestly, a lot. And so that's like, that has been my journey. If I were to define it in one clean paragraph, it's understanding that my sexuality and my purity is good. My sexuality is a good thing. Because I remember a period when I was a teenager that I, was like watching porn and masturbating and not wanting to, right? That's an important note. And then feeling really dirty. I remember deciding one day, like, my mind is so dirty, and I'm going to do everything I can to cleanse my mind. I wanted to rewire my brain. I wanted to just be completely pure. And so I like overcompensated and overemphasized this idea of purifying my mind because it's dirty. And I just had this like underlying belief that my mind is dirty. I'm impure because of the things I think about, the things I've seen, and therefore I need to cleanse myself, right? Which is healthy and fine to an extent, but it was like overly obsessive, like I'm dirty. And I never stopped to think, like, maybe inherently my purity is good and my heart is actually quite clean. But I've just maybe made mistakes, and I've kind of added layers and layers of shadows and shame that's unnecessary and mostly unfounded, to be honest. When I think about it now, just like, oh, I masturbated and I'm a terrible fallen human being. Like, those are the words that came to my mind when I was like 12, 13. It's like, I'm fallen. And I remember thinking that, like, I'm fallen because I masturbated, And it was like, it's kind of like when you overemphasize on one thing, you tend to gravitate more towards it. It's called the white bear effect. White bear effect, where they did this study. A psychologist did a study where he had, test subjects ring a bell every time they thought about a white bear, and he said, "Don't think about a white bear for 5 minutes." He's like, "Don't
Sure.
think about a white bear," and they had to ring the bell every time that they did think about it, and the result is that they were constantly ringing the bell because that's all they could think about it because he said, "Don't think
Sure.
about the white bear." And so the whole purpose of that study is to show that the more we emphasize not doing something, the more we're likely to mess up and actually do it because we're being distracted by the idea of not doing it. Like giving a speech, and all you think about is don't make a mistake, make a mistake. And of course, you're not focused on where you're going with the speech. And so you're way more likely to actually mess up in the speech because you're just focusing on not making a mistake.
You're feeding your nervousness.
Yeah, the nervousness, um,
That's what, like, yeah, the same thing as like anxiety attacks. It's the same process of like you feeding these concerns, these worries, and they're just culminating and growing and festering and giving birth to new things to worry about until it just becomes so overwhelming. Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And so then, okay, there's this. Okay, we got to unpack this a little bit because it's not the purpose of High Noon or this podcast or anything, but the idea, Uncle Dave has said this multiple times, and I really like it, is that it's not our job to comment on God's standards, right? But God has standards, and He's not going to lower them for us, but He's not going to like make us feel bad for not reaching those standards. Just like a little kid, like if a little kid doesn't know how to speak a language because they're a baby, right? You're like, well, I'm not going to stop speaking my language in order to accommodate your limitations. I will keep on speaking my language until you learn it because you're my child and I want to communicate with you. And eventually they'll learn it, right? And some kids learn faster than others, but you don't give up your standard. And actually, when parents speak to their kids like normal people speaking to normal people, instead of like, "Oh, Gaggy, wanna goo goo?" Like the kids actually grow up smarter. They've studied this, right? So because they're learning how to speak normal, not speak baby, right? So when you speak baby to baby, baby learns how to speak baby. So when you maintain your, I always did this growing up with my kids. I joke around with them like I would joke around with my friends. And because of that, they understood jokes at a high level. They understood, things like sarcasm, irony, like stuff that is complex. Like dad is saying something that sounds serious, but I can tell he's joking somehow. What is happening? That's nuance because I speak to them like I would speak to other people. So they learned faster. But that's just an analogy, like in terms of sexual integrity, like there is an absolute standard. I love how like people are trying to test that and be like, "Oh, that's just you and your religion." Is like, "Oh yeah, find another way to impregnate somebody." Find another way, right? You can use science, but even then, where's the sperm coming from? Where are the eggs coming from? It's pretty absolute, right? When a man, ejaculates and he's got sperm, the sperm they're not, unclear about where they want to go. They have one destination in mind. They have one purpose. They have one goal. And the eggs have one function as well. So you can try to navigate some hypothetical, theoretical gobbledygook, which, a lot of people try to do is like, "Oh, well, sex is just sure." But at the end of the day, there's a clear defined purpose. And part of that too is the emotional aspect. It's not just procreation, right? But when we deviate from like having a healthy relationship, then we have to, I think it's worth a dive. I have a few books and I tend not to refer to it because it's really heavy stuff, right? But the whole Alfred Kinsey rabbit hole, when you really study him, is we are now like the manifest destiny of a few guys, a few key figures, right? Freud, who had a really dysfunctional relationship with his mommy and with sex, and that all manifested in his theories. And then his kind of psychological, spiritual child is Alfred Kinsey, who then had so much weird stuff going on inside him that he did these studies, even though he wasn't a scientist for this kind of realm. He studied bugs, right? But he published this book that was just like the conclusion that he came to was like, anything goes and you should do everything that your body wants you to do because that's healthy. And anything that's not that is repression, which comes from Freud, which, this idea of like, if you don't fully express your sexual desires in the moment, then you're repressing yourself and that's going to lead you to sickness. That's insanity, because that means that every time a guy's horny, then he should act on that. That's infantile, right? That's the essence of immaturity and danger for the society, because that means you're in, I don't know, a bus, you're anywhere with somebody who wants to have sex with you, and then they need to do that because they want to do that, and then you have no say, right? That's just the essence of hell. So these guys created this realm of trying to deviate from the essence of sex, which is, again, when we always kind of simplify it, right? Which is like the end result of anything to do with your sex is about intimacy with God, the divine, feeling closer to God, feeling closer to yourself, and feeling closer to an actual physical person that you're committed to. Because what that does is it grows your sense of purpose and meaning and connection in the world with yourself. You feel better in your own body. You feel better being yourself. You feel great. You feel connected. When it's in a loving relationship, the love actually tangibly grows. Your trust, your desire to want to serve the other person because they served you. It's this reciprocity. And then in the midst of all that is this feeling of, God, thank you so much. I feel so at peace with my place in this time, in this space, in history. And like when you have pure sex, and that's the thing, is like, even saying the word, it sounds judgmental and sounds, because of people's association to the idea of purity. But what I'm saying, pure intentions with a pure heart, pure mind, then you feel so much more connected, and you feel a sense of intimacy with self, with God, with others, with your spouse. And that translates to your kids. And it translates, there's so many dividends. And the other kind of sex that isn't about purity inevitably leads to this deficit where you now have to take from other people, either sexually or like the people that we're serving who are struggling with porn, their sex requires them to then be needy people. Now they can't take care of themselves because they don't feel good. They feel depressed. They self-hatred. And now when they go out into the world, they're not givers, they're takers, because that's what porn trains you to do, is self-centeredness, because it's like this vacuum that can never be fulfilled through these means. And so you just are a desperate, needy person. And there's more and more people like that walking this planet because they're not fulfilled deeply, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is the difference between like real actual purity. This is why it's important to understand what is purity, because otherwise, it's not about, I have this, okay, I'm going to let you talk, but I do want to talk about one of my mentees, because I'm really struggling to get this point across about, he's obsessed with not watching porn, and I keep on trying to get him out of that mindset,
Yeah.
But I've been talking way too long, so I got to pass the mic.
We're good. But you mentioned treating your kids like adults or like buddies. And I asked my dad for some parenting advice. This was when we were first pregnant.
Okay.
With our child before Kojin was born, and he has never given me parent advice. Actually, he's not given me advice about much in life. He just, like, to be clear, he's always present. This is how I would describe him. He's always present. He's always been there, but he doesn't go out of his way to give advice ever to people, to anyone. He's like the one that will wait for you to come, which is nice, but also frustrating at times, right? But when I was first becoming a parent, I asked him for parenting advice, and I was like, this is it. This is his wisdom. And this is probably the only time I'll ask him. And then we were driving, as you do with your dad when you're having deep conversations. And he said two things. He said, number one, never lie to your kids. Never lie to your kids. And number two, he said, always treat them like adults. And a lot like at surface value, it sounds like a very, like treat them like adults, like you should know better, like always being, expecting the most out of them, like they expecting them to be responsible out the gate and all that stuff. But what he really meant was what you were saying is like, don't like stoop down to being a baby, like treating them like a baby all the time. Treat them like a human, like a respectable adult, like a respected person. And I've definitely, kept that close to heart.
There's some people, there's one guy that I'm talking to right now. I really keep on guiding him back to the main point, which is like, what do you want? How do you experience feeling connected? How do you experience feeling good about yourself? And how do you do more of that? Right. And he keeps on being like, if he slips up, be like, okay, well, I'm just going to try harder. And he goes back to willpower, and he goes back to, I just want to be porn free and this kind of thing. And it totally, like, I get it. I get it, because when you're struggling with an addiction, then you just want to get rid of the addiction, but you cannot ever do that unless you understand why you're going to the addiction in the first place. It's not the reason, it's your outlet. There's a deeper reason why. And so like the idea of feeling pure is really this beautiful feeling. Like I don't think most people even know that it's available to them at any time, right? And it's not a religious thing, but it's something that religions do offer. Especially in Christianity, offers this concept of grace. It's one of our 5 high noon virtues. It's something that you cannot receive unless you really make space for it. The idea of being forgiven, the idea of stop torturing yourself, the idea that God loves you in spite of your mistakes. Like we have access to that at any point in time, but it's actually a hard space to get into. But when you actually do experience real, genuine grace, it's the most humbling thing in the world, and it's the most liberating feeling in the world. And when you then feel forgiven, deeply, sincerely forgiven, you feel pure again. You feel like I have hope. Things like optimism start returning. This is a very pure expression of love, is optimism. You start to feel gratitude, right? These are all feelings associated with purity, living a pure life. And you have access to them only when you start exercising the purity muscle. And just like all of our virtues and just like the main topics that we talk about, purity is a muscle that needs to be exercised. And when you hate yourself, that's a very impure feeling. When you resent others, it's really impure, because it takes you away from God. It takes you away from your potential as a person, and you're stuck in this prison of your own making. Right? Yeah. So to really be pure is to be free, to fully express the best of yourself, which has no forum. You have no forum for optimism when you're steeped in self-hatred. Because all you really deep down, even like you'll watch a really inspiring video and deep down inside, you're like, yeah, but it'll never happen for me. Right?
Hey, let me tell you, if you are trying to have sexual integrity and you've been struggling to do so, then we have the solution for you. Absolutely free, guys. We're still a nonprofit. The Ascend program is where you need to learn. We have groups, we've got accountability, we've got mentorship, we've got one-on-one calls, we have curriculum, everything you need to finally break free from porn and masturbation and have sexual integrity. So go to highnoon.org and you can get started with joining Ascend and putting porn and masturbation for good this time, all right? So link somewhere down below or check it out at highnoon.org. See ya.
There are lessons that it comes to us to learn. And I think that everyone has a different lesson.
Sure.
And there's a different path to get there. It's not always the same. Like the same root cause of their unwanted behavior, the same emotional triggers, they're not always the same. And so when you're talking about that mentee of yours, there's clearly a lesson that is probably the biggest roadblock in his journey to sexual integrity and purity, and he just hasn't learned the lesson yet, right? And so I think that's just a helpful way to like frame things. And that's kind of how... Let's say this is kind of how I live my life, nowadays, is just there's something that this is trying to teach me, like God, spirit world, my ancestors, something about this situation that's usually an unpleasant or unwanted thing that's trying to teach me. And I'm not seeing it for whatever reason. And that's why having mentors is helpful. That's why having perspective is helpful. Joining a program is helpful, all that stuff. But I think that guy in particular there's a lesson, and it's not a judgment to him, because to us it might be very clear, but for some people it's not even the behavior of porn and masturbation. It's something very subtle, as I just don't love myself. I just don't like myself, and I feel so much shame around my being me, and that leads me to wanting to escape and isolate and go to porn and masturbate, right, as an example. For some people it's more practical, like they just don't know how to use their time well. They don't know how to prioritize their days and their mornings, and they don't know how to set boundaries and hard rules. Like, I just don't spend time on this app or that website, or I just don't go into my room alone. Like, there's certain lessons that are very practical that I think that everyone is gravitating towards. Naturally, something's pulling them towards us that they are needing to learn.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're not seeing it, or they're seeing it, but they're choosing not to engage with it. And I think the same is true with shadows, right? We're talking about purity. I think what I've observed is that we are the distance between feeling impure and being completely pure is much shorter than we think, you know? Like we often think of it as a very, very long, arduous process that is like a cleansing. It's going to take months and years even to undo a lot of the wiring that my brain and my soul has done because of my behavior, whatever. But I've experienced, and many people have experienced, it can happen in like a few minutes, really, because we're talking about these muscles. Muscles take time to strengthen, but you can stimulate them in such a fierce way, like practicing absolute brutal honesty about ourselves with somebody that's going to give us grace, like you're talking about. Like that has been probably the number one life hack for me, but also people that I've seen. It's like there's probably somebody that is in my life that I'm not talking to about a specific topic, and it's becoming a shadow. And there's a giant, big old lesson to learn behind it. And on the other side of that few-minute conversation, honestly, is immense growth, immense grace, and ultimately the result of just being pure and feeling pure. And so I kind of want to dispel this myth that purity is some very, very long, difficult thing that's going to take years. It's like, it's actually, I think, especially the people that are in our world, because there are tons of people, billions of people in the world that are just watching porn and masturbating, and they're like, I don't care, this is fine. It doesn't hurt myself. Like those people are in a different level of unawareness, right? But if we're having people come to us that are of the awareness of like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the purpose of my sexual energy. Those people are very, very close to completely eliminating the impurity. They're very close to eliminating those shadows. And so I'm saying this like, let's like give hope. Like we got to give hope to these people, that especially the ones that are closest to God, they're actually, that distance is much, much shorter than we think. And it just takes the right action or the right conversation. And I think that in our hearts, people know what to do. Like they know that shadow's there, but we just don't do it because it's scary. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that instant, you talk about an instant, a moment where you experience grace, you experience true purity. And so here's one thing, a cautionary tale though. I don't know if I have a tale, but a cautionary warning, a warning of caution. Just trying to express my redundant words. There is the feeling, the passing, the transient feeling of grace that is accessible through prayer, through conditions. But if you don't know how to contain that and sustain that like a muscle, then it will be fleeting, and you will actually, in some cases, feel worse in the end, right? So a lot of people experience grace, but they don't know how to, that it's like a state of mind. They just think that it's like, I got it. But then they go back to hating themselves, and now they hate themselves even more, right? This is why a lot of people, we talk to the staff in Champyong, but when you just try to remedy physical and mental, emotional things spiritually and just in the realm of spirituality, then you come back home and guess what happens? You adopt the same habits, because there's a physical, practical aspect to this too, which is our domain here in High Noon. Because the spiritual aspect is unbelievably important. That's your eternal aspect. It's your connection to the past and all the ancestors that you had that did some shady stuff that is in you and a part of you and drives you sometimes. It's called upregulating and downregulating your genetics, right? But just because you experience a sense of forgiveness and purity in the moment, that's not the end of it. That's not like, okay, all my sins are forgiven, peace. It's like, Jesus was very clear, now stop sinning, right? Like he was like, you're forgiven, but stop. And that but stop is like, now you've got to some work to do, right? So I've definitely experienced, like in the past when I was just more religious and less practical, it was always a game of, if I just pray enough, if I just work hard enough, somehow my soul will cleanse itself or I'll feel pure. And that is the religious trap, in my opinion, that it's about, effort in staving away the demons. Like I just pray to make the demons go away, instead of creating an environment mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically in your home that makes it so uncomfortable for demons to even drop by, right? Because there's so much light. when you live the high noon life and your thoughts, you know where to put your thoughts, right? You know where to condition your mind and how to feel emotions and how to process good and bad emotions, then shadows don't stick around. You know, it's not like, it's funny that we talk about shadows and versus light, and our founders are from a place where there is no sun. There's like no sun in Westport, Washington. It's like Foggy Bottoms, or that terrible town in Paw Patrol. Second reference of Paw Patrol this episode. But that the effort and why sexual integrity is not like, okay, I guess I'm not struggling with porn, so I don't need to work on my sexual integrity. Why this is an everlasting commission from God for us is like, because you got to maintain the light. You got to stay focused from one day to the next. And when you do that, then depression can't stick around. You can feel sad for sure. You can have bad days for sure, but it doesn't stick around, because even when you're sad, you're like, wait, but I'm not this circumstance. I have so much to be grateful for. And you start focusing on that. Oh, this is how the people that depend on me. Okay, I'm going to start focusing on that. And all of a sudden, you've left that in the dust. You've processed those emotions and you've moved on. You have no reason to stick around in Sadsville or Angerville or these places. You stop by, you take a pee, and you keep on your journey in life, you know?
Yeah, I think it's quite an exciting idea that you can purify yourself in day to day. That's exciting. I think it's more exciting than the idea of, you know, like this long journey. Like you said earlier, purity is not a destination, it's a journey, which is helpful. But also, I think that people can fall into the trap of thinking, I've reached the destination and therefore I am never going to be falling down the mountain again. You know?
Yeah.
It's called adolescent egocentrism, which is like, I am beyond that, and therefore I'm never going to succumb to temptation again. Like, no, how many people I've talked to that were like clean from unwanted sexual behaviors, porn, masturbation, got blessed, married, had some kids, and then fell right back into their behavior, right? Feeling impure again, or impurifying themselves, essentially. And so what they did was they were like, I'm at the top of the mountain and I don't need to work on myself anymore. I don't need to, in the realm of sexuality and sexual integrity, they're like, I'm good, you know, for the rest of my life. And it's like, well, purity is something that can be maintained. I would say maintained is a good term to describe it. Like you're having a foothold at this over purity, and you know, sometimes we have a strong foothold and sometimes we're weaker, but it's to maintain that strong foothold so that whatever life throws at us, whatever emotions, stresses, as they will come, difficulties, temptations, will always feel like, okay, I'm good, I'm strong. And what we're doing here, right, Andrew, in High Noon, is we're helping you create that strong foothold through community, through connection, through the real substance of what it means to be pure, apart from just willpower and willing yourself through it. Because anyone can will themselves through defeating, you know, any unwanted behavior. Anyone can do that.
Sure.
Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything about the quality of their relationships, the quality of their heart, how pure they actually are, you know, in their mind. It's like you could be fantasizing about all kinds of stuff and still not watching porn and masturbating. You could be taking drugs all day, for all that matter, and not watching porn. You know, I think I mentioned this before. There was a guy who was you know, a known drug addict in my area, in our community and church community, just to be clear. And I was talking to him about porn, and he was like, "I don't get why people struggle with porn. I don't struggle at all with that stuff." And I was like, "Dude, you're like shooting yourself up and stuff." So, you know, it doesn't mean anything about somebody's quality of life and happiness if they're not engaging in a behavior.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, like I think there's two ways. There's two ways to kind of understand this, is that when you do feel pure, you have more access to pure adjacent emotions or connected emotions, like things like gratitude, things like optimism, like I mentioned. But the other side of that is sometimes when you're not feeling pure, actually, those are the reps that you need to do. You need to practice gratitude, practice forgiveness, practice these things in order to feel more pure. And that's the road back to purity. They're interconnected. So if one side is starting to wither, then you need to strengthen it by the other side. So if you're not feeling pure, to practice gratitude, to practice, the 5 virtues, to practice living according to the person that you want to be until you start to feel that again. But also when you are feeling pure, just understand that exercising and continuing that, maintaining that, like you said, or sustaining that purity it's not just going to happen randomly. You have to keep on putting in those reps of investing into the people in your lives, investing into your spiritual life, investing into your self-awareness, and like feeding yourself. And so this is the game. It's a fun game because it never ends. Because as soon as you reach the top of one plateau, you realize there's a whole other game you're about to play. Next level. That's why video games are so true. Once you like master a certain level and get to the next level, that next level is so hard in the beginning until you master that. And then when you restart the video game, it's so easy to go through those first levels that you've already like been through so many times. It's just like you've etched out those avenues in your psyche. But that's life, is like, you'll figure it out. But when you start developing your sexual integrity as an individual, it's a whole nother game when you're blessed, when you're married, when you're in a relationship. And then your sexual integrity when you have kids is a whole nother level. Because so many guys experience the desire to want to watch porn because of their anger towards their kids. Think about how messed up that is. They are triggered sexually by anger towards their offspring. That makes no logical sense, like in a linear fashion. But it's because it's all connected to your internal state, your emotions and all this stuff. So it doesn't go away. The stakes just get raised. But it's so much more fun than you can enjoy being an individual or a spouse or a parent so much more when you have done this work layer by layer.
Yeah. Can I share another story about my wife's father?
Please.
So after I got blessed with my wife,
I like that.
Just to clarify for people, so I was like 3 years clean from porn, masturbation, and I was like really, really clear about my integrity. And like I said, I was like overcompensating for my work. And so I went to the blessing, and within like a year or two, I went back to porn, right? I slipped up. And of course I felt demolished, demoralized from that whole experience. Told my father, and he said exactly what you said, Andrew. He said, he didn't chastise me. He said that, Benjy, you're a married man now. You're playing a different game. It's a different level. And that really liberated me because it framed perfectly for me what I was struggling with. It was not the act of porn. It was that I was facing new emotions in my relationship with my wife. I was feeling new things, new challenges, right? Good emotions, but also challenging emotions that I've never processed or faced before. And he helped frame it as like, this is the new level for your sexual integrity.
That's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a new level of difficulty, but you're going back to the familiar old place. So like, think about that, Benjy. Like in terms of like the guys and gals that we serve, so many of them are so disappointed that like, oh, I thought I was beyond porn. And they probably are in many ways beyond the reason why they went to porn in the first place, because they're more mature, but they're still going to the same old place, even though they're at a higher level. And they don't see that. Right? They just see I'm still stuck, rather than, yes, you're still connected to a dysfunction, but your capacity has grown. You're a more capable person, but you're still running away. So it's worth looking at. But that's a very clever way of looking at it, because there's growth, even though it's not visible to the person who's stuck in it. Because we've had this conversation. People have different expectations. They've been watching porn for a decade or more, and then they're making they make progress, they're growing, and then they go back to porn and they're like, oh, see, I'm right back at the beginning. It's like, no, you're not at the beginning.
Yeah.
You're still in an abusive relationship for sure with porn, but you've grown so much. That's a very important distinction.
Yeah. It's like people that go on diets, they lose a ton of fat, right? Ton of weight, and then they eat one cookie and they're like, oh, I'm still exactly the same, and they don't look at all the evidence of their physical transformation. It's exactly like that.
You've described my life, Benjy. Yeah, I think this is great. I think, purity, we have to continue to have this conversation because it is so important, but so misunderstood. And society is really attacking purity from so many different angles. Like, it's attacking purity by creating a culture that's based off of justification, resentment, all this political stuff where we're just blaming other people and not taking responsibility, both sides of the aisle. There's like that. But then there's also people who are directly assaulting kids and like trying to take their purity away. I mean, it's a real affront. And so the more that we understand what purity is and what it isn't, and how to exercise the purity muscle, the more that we're going to create this channel cook culture that we're striving for. But it's not going to happen when we have a certain amount of people in our church or something like that, because as we're seeing, our church is fraying a little bit, just in terms of like, we have to have a group of people around the world, but who are all pure in heart. That's how channel cook happens. Is like, otherwise we're just going to end up with these same problems over and over again in different forms, but the more that we all work on our hearts, the more that we can actually really show up pure and create a pure culture. That's how channel cook is formed. And that's a reflection of like the amount of people that are doing this. Daily exercises. All right, so do your reps, everybody. Figure out like where you're feeling pure and where you're feeling impure, where you're feeling shame, where you're feeling shadows. Repetitions include things like gratitude. I've found this to be my lifesaver in the past year. I do exercises morning and night for gratitude. First thing in the morning before I talk to anybody, I have a glass of salt water and then I make a coffee and I sit down and I write gratitude and then I pray gratitude, and it's saved my life. Because typically, Benji, first things in my head, first thoughts, first feelings are like worrying about the future or regretting something of the past. And that's where, like, if I just lying in bed, I'm not thinking about how happy I am, unless I start practicing. And now it is. Now it's like I have to still remind myself, like, oh wait, no, what am I grateful for? And like dwell on that. But that allows me to see the day from a pure perspective. Gratitude, straight up gratitude exercises. But then, there's things like optimism. What's the best thing that can happen today, right? What does God want for you? And who do you have to be thankful for? And like, when you start leading like that, then your heart starts to feel pure and your mind starts to be pure and your actions are aligned with that. So put in your reps, everybody. It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey. I don't know if we still have to do gratitude exercises in the spirit world. Don't ask me. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't think it would be fun if we didn't have to do anything, any effort. If we just float around and just smile all day, it sounds kind of boring. Who knows? Who knows, Benji? All right. Any last words from thou?
Yes,
Thou,
gratitude.
thine?
Grateful. Thank you. If you guys are grateful, then let us know for this episode.
If you're grateful and you know it, give us a like and a share.
Yeah.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Hey there, it is Benji here. I want to ask for your attention for just a second. We are asking y'all who have been benefiting from the podcast for just one small favor. We don't ask for much. In fact, we actually try very hard not to ask much. But if you have benefited from this content in the podcast, then I want to encourage y'all to consider becoming a donor for High Noon. Yes, we are still a nonprofit and we rely on your donations to function. And if you would like to just donate $10 a month, if you are looking for a way to contribute your cash to something really meaningful, then I hope that High Noon can be that thing for you. So you can go to highnoon.org/donate. You can click in a link somewhere down below this episode and become a donor for just $10 a month or $20 or $100 or $1,000, whatever it is, guys. It is truly helpful. All right. So go check that out if you have benefited from this podcast in any way over the years. Lots of love.